That was another smooth number. And let's check in on America right now.
These are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we.
That's a great Bushism. So that was a moment of zen from the Bush administration, and it has aged like fine wine. Indeed, there is nothing we won't do to harm our own people. America, F yeah. So welcome to State of Play on Mint Press News. Tonight, we've got an interesting, if unconventional episode for you. So the first segment, we will be discussing Trump's bombshell assertion that there will be direct talks with the Iranian government over the nuclear deal. Iran says the talks will be indirect through Omani mediators. For internal political tensions, the Iranian government will probably end up keeping them indirect, but the whole situation is completely dynamic. As you know, the U.S. and Iran don't have formal relations, so that should be interesting. Really haven't had formal relations since the 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA that Obama was trying to get through. So we are going to get into all that. And the second segment will be an interview with my friend and colleague, former U.S. Army intelligence officer, Captain Josephine Guilbeau, about her detention by Israeli Defense Forces and how the Israeli government is systematically destroying the banks and credit unions in Palestine as a means to starve, erase, and further disenfranchise and marginalize Palestinians in the West Bank. As you know, the entire banking system has collapsed in Gaza, and it's pretty much like now a barter economy. Okay, so should be an interesting episode, and now it's time for the annoying Patreon plug. Mint Press News is a small independent newsroom with no corporate sponsors, pretty much demonetized on all platforms. So we are on Patreon, and you know, any little bit helps. If you're picking up what we're putting down and you like some sort of independent watchdog journalism / reporting, you can go to the website, go to the Patreon, read some articles, and help us out. If not, because you're getting nickeled and dimed during this capitalist hellscape as we, continue to decline, especially with, oh my God, Trump put 104%, or he's threatening to put 104% tariffs on China. So the trade war has begun. And if you can't support us with $5 or $10 a month on Patreon, we get it. We're just glad you're here. So if you could like, share, and subscribe, comment in the live chat or comment in the comment section afterwards, that would be great. It helps push this out into the algorithm so it gets more eyes on it. Again, we're just glad you're here. So as everybody is still filtering into the episode, let's see how disappointed and uncomfortable Netanyahu was at the White House press conference with our Orange Commander-in-Chief yesterday. Again, Netanyahu's supposed, or was it? I think it was today. Yeah. Anyways, Netanyahu's supposed to fly out back to Israel tomorrow. There's also hilarious stories where he added 250 miles to his plane trip in order to avoid ICC countries or having to land in ICC-related countries and fly over their airspace. So that was funny. But anyways, yes, he met with President Trump this week, and it was a very uncomfortable and disappointing meeting for Netanyahu. And of course, I don't like Trump, but I still relish Netanyahu's discomfort. So let's go ahead and check that out while everyone's still filtering into the live.
About a whole new trade, maybe not. Don't forget, we help Israel a lot. We give Israel $4 billion a year. That's a lot. Congratulations, by the way. That's pretty good. But we give Israel billions of dollars a year. Billions.
I like how he just talks. Yeah. He's not saying anything that's not factual.
For the Times of Israel, the IDF is fighting again in the Gaza Strip. I myself might be called up in a month. Do you think that's the way to pressure Hamas to get to a deal? And do you think blocking humanitarian aid is also an effective pressure?
Well, you know how I feel about the Gaza Strip. I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate, and I think it's something that we would be involved in. But having a peace force like the United States there, controlling and owning the Gaza Strip would be a good thing. Because right now, all it is
He's, of course, talking about U.S. boots on the ground.
for years and years, all I hear about is killing and Hamas and problems. And if you take the people, the Palestinians, and move them around to different countries, and you have plenty of countries that will do that, and you really have a freedom zone. You call it the freedom zone, a free zone, a zone where people aren't going to be killed every day. That's a hell of a place.
I can't with these stream of consciousnesses. So Gaza is going to become a freedom zone with U.S. boots on the ground. Okay, well, never heard that before in the past 20 years of the global war on terror.
So, you know what I call it? A great location that nobody wants to live in, because they really don't. And when they have good living, real living, where Hamas and all of the problems they have, the level of death on the Gaza Strip is just incredible. And I've said it. I don't understand why Israel ever gave it up. Israel owned it. It wasn't this man, so I can say it. He wouldn't.
Because it was causing too many problems, because there was too much attrition. Yeah, they didn't give it up because they wanted to. They gave it up because it was unsustainable for them to keep defending their settlements and dealing with popular uprisings.
They give it up. I know him very well. There's no way. They took oceanfront property and they gave it to people for peace. How did that work out? Not good.
Okay, well, that was a nice little rant, but the entire time Netanyahu was just like, I'm just gonna have to sit here and listen to it. He was clearly looked very uncomfortable when Trump's like, 4 billion, it's a lot, you're very lucky. And of course, you know, they feel like they are entitled to that, of course. So anyways, guys, we got the two segments here. If you're just filtering in, the first half of this episode is going to be on Iran and direct talks or indirect talks about the nuclear deal between Tehran and the Trump administration. The second half, we're going to be talking to Captain Josephine Guilbeau, former military intelligence officer who was questioned at length by an Israeli Defense Force intelligence officer when she tried to get into the West Bank. We're also going to be talking about the West Bank a little bit. And the second half is an interview. But anyways, let's begin with Iran. And let's start with some basic bare bones BBC reporting.
Back to BBC News now. Russia has welcomed news that the US and Iran are to meet for indirect talks on Tehran's nuclear program. The Kremlin says it's long supported a diplomatic settlement to the dispute. Iranian state media says indirect talks with the US will be held in Oman on Saturday, led by Iran's foreign minister and President Trump's special envoy. While announcing the meeting during Benjamin Netanyahu's White House visit yesterday, Donald Trump said Iran is going to be in great danger if talks don't go well.
We have a very big meeting and we'll see what can happen. And I think everybody agrees that doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious. And we're dealing with them directly. You know, a lot of people say, oh, maybe you're going through surrogates or you're not dealing directly, you're dealing through other countries. No, we're dealing with them directly, and maybe a deal is going to be made. That would be great. It'll be really great for Iran, I can tell you that.
Well,
yeah, this is actually interesting because, again, nothing he's saying is untrue here. But of course, Trump has a complicated history with Iran. He says they're going to be dealing with them directly. The Iranian foreign minister says they are not, but we're going to get into that shortly.
I'll be speaking to Dr. Roxanne Farmian, a lecturer in international relations at Cambridge University. This was her assessment on the likelihood of those talks being successful.
I think they're in better position than they have been in the past under Biden, for example, when the talks did not go anywhere. I think Trump is very motivated to try to open up the economy of Iran, which has been very much in a backwater for so many years, and that would
because of U.S. sanctions. And again, as Trump started this maximum pressure campaign on Iran after he tore up the nuclear deal and started this maximum pressure campaign, it literally decimated, not decimated because decimated means 1 in 10, but it literally tore apart the middle class in Iran. So now there's complete unrest, a hardline government, unhappy population, so they keep having to drill down on violence, and Iran has its own problems. But yes, it's been a backwater because of U.S. sanctions. So Iran definitely wants a better economic relations with the United States and a relief of sanctions, 100%.
Certainly gain him the accolades of changing a relationship that has been hostile and very cold with the United States after 45 years. So if he is able to establish a deal that really lift sanctions, and I think the Iranians are quite keen for that because their currency is plummeting and their economy is in very bad shape. Inflation is rampant. So I think they are more open as well than they have been for some years.
A quick answer to this question. How close is Tehran to any sort of nuclear device?
Well, it's producing more advanced enrichment of nuclear material than it has been before, which is worrying. On the other hand, it has consistently claimed it is not making a nuclear weapon, and most experts agree it's not, and that its main reason for the nuclear program is to use leverage to lift its sanctions.
Yeah, also, it's a civilian nuclear program, which, you're entitled to have under international law. So that's another aspect that a lot of Western commentators don't bring up. Countries are allowed to have nuclear programs. One of the only reasons we don't is because of its relationship with Israel and Israel's relationship in the region. And if you want a nuclear non-proliferation treaty, to not have Israel involved in it when we know they have nukes is kind of wild. Yes. Western hypocrisy at its finest. They can have nukes, but no one else can. I read in Foreign Policy magazine when I was still in the Army. It was like 2010. One guy had an interesting argument that, nukes generally have a stabilizing influence on the region. We're not going to get into that, but it was an interesting article. I'll try to find it and put it into the comments. It was written in 2011, and it was about Iran getting a nuclear weapon, and it was a pretty non-neoconservative perspective. So anyways, guys, let's do it. The breakdown. So President Trump surprised the world Monday when he said that the United States was conducting direct talks with Iran over its nuclear program and that high-level negotiations would take place on Saturday. Quote, I think everybody agrees that doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious. I guess the obvious means bomb them. Is that, I assume that's what he means by the obvious. Trump said before warning that Iran will be in great danger, and that should diplomacy fail. And what we know is that Axios News reported today that the Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, will lead the U.S. delegation for talks set to take place in Oman. Again, for some history, guys, Oman has acted as a traditional mediator between the United States and Iran in the past. While Trump repeated the talks will be direct, Tehran says negotiations will be indirect, though through Omani mediators. Writing about the upcoming talks on X, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. I went to language school for Persian, but it's been so long. We'll just say the Iranian foreign minister. Wow, Greg, that's embarrassing. It's as much, quote, it's as much an opportunity as it is a test. The ball is in America's court. He just wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post, which we're going to look at in a couple minutes. Essentially, Iran will play ball for sanctions relief if they're allowed to keep their civil nuclear program. But how do Netanyahu and the Washington bomb Iran neocons figure into this landscape? The whole Israel neocon diplomatic strategy, which Trump has kind of tacitly supported, probably more than that if you looked at his last administration, demands a complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program, which is a complete non-starter for Iran. And that's exactly why people like Netanyahu and John Bolton and all the classic neocons like Wolfowitz have always supported it, precisely because it can't and won't work. And in terms of a lack of a diplomatic solution, because if that's how they frame the terms of the diplomatic negotiations, well, Iran will decline, they get to bomb them. So anyways, that's why neocons have always had the hardline position, no nuclear program, specifically because they know that that is a non-starter for Tehran. So the U.S. and Iran, held indirect talks, just for some context, during former President Joe Biden's term, but they made little, if any, progress. I think the commentator on the BBC just mentioned that. So the last known direct negotiations that I brought up earlier between the two governments were under then President Barack Obama, who spearheaded the 2015 international nuclear deal that Trump later abandoned. So warnings by Trump of military action against Iran had jangled already tense nerves across the Middle East after open warfare in Gaza, Lebanon, military strikes in Yemen. Looks like we just dropped a bunch of civilians there. A change of leadership in Syria and, Israeli-Syrian exchanges on the border. So like the entire region's still, just like it has been since October 7th, on the verge of lighting up. So a deal here would actually completely de-escalate a lot of these regions. Of course, it wouldn't stop the Houthis because the Iranians don't really control them, but it would definitely calm down tensions throughout West Asia. So direct talks would not occur without the explicit approval, and they will not occur without the explicit approval of Ayatollah Khamenei, who in February said negotiations with the U.S. were not smart, wise, or honorable. So after Trump spoke, a senior Iranian official speaking on the condition of anonymity, and this is according to Reuters, quote, "The talks will not be direct. It will be with Oman's mediation," unquote. Oman, which maintains good relations, this is why they're the mediators between the U.S. and Iran, has been this long-time channel. So is Iran's Noor News, affiliated with the country's top security body, described Trump's statements about a planned direct meeting as a part of a, quote, psychological operation aimed at influencing domestic and internal public opinion, unquote. Yes, of course, they think a lot of the hardliners in Iran definitely see Trump saying this as a psyop to undermine a pretty unpopular government for a lot of people within Iran. And they are very, very concerned about internal security right now. So a second Iranian official, also according to Reuters, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said over the weekend there was possibly a window of around 2 months to reach a deal, makes sense, citing worries that Iran's longtime foe Israel might launch its own attack if talks took longer. So Netanyahu has shown little support for U.S. negotiations with Iran, said diplomacy could prevent Tehran from ever getting nuclear weapons in a, quote, full way, the way it was done in Libya. It's a whole nother thing. I think that would be a good thing, unquote. Okay, so real quick, I just wanted to bring this up. So and this just happened, and it was made in Hebrew, and I couldn't get the subtitles in English, but we're going to look at a piece real quick by Barak Ravid. He is a reporter for Axios News. He's also not a fan of Netanyahu. This was from a couple, like 6 hours ago. Again, the video itself is in Hebrew. Netanyahu said in a video released by his office before departing Washington back to Israel that a nuclear deal with Iran would be acceptable only if it included the explosion of all of Iran's nuclear facilities and, quote, the dismantling of all equipment under American supervision and implemented by the Americans. He noted that if that does not happen and Iran drags out the talks, a military option should be used. Everyone understands that, says Netanyahu. I discussed this at length with President Trump. Now, we don't know if that's true or what he actually discussed with President Trump. But yes, Netanyahu, again, how many times have we been saying this? It's his lifelong political fever dream to get the United States to bomb Iran on behalf of Israel. So we have to remember that that's just, of course, what Netanyahu says. And this is why Reuters was quoting an unofficial source within the Iranian government's familiar with the policy that, if they feel like if the talks get stretched out beyond 2 months, there's a concern that Israel will take preemptive action and force a regional confrontation. Now, that's a valid concern. Now, during his 2017-21 term, Trump withdrew the U.S. from the deal and the JCPOA, and the world power is designed to curb Iran's sensitive nuclear work in exchange for sanctions relief. Trump also reimposed sweeping sanctions, and now maybe those might get repealed. Since then, Iran has far surpassed that deal's limits on uranium enrichment in order to use it as leverage for sanctions relief. So, however, these are interesting times because Netanyahu is leaving the U.S. tomorrow after a disappointing visit to the White House where Trump refused to remove the 17% tariff on Israeli goods. Direct talks with Iran is also something he doesn't want. But real quick, before we get into it, let's look at what Iran's foreign minister says. So he published a very important op-ed in the Washington Post today. If you read it, you'll see for the first time Tehran is signaling its openness for doing direct trade with Iran and U.S. companies engaging with the Iranian economy. A, quote, $1 trillion opportunity, he calls it. It seems like actually the Iranians, because this is his foreign minister, this is like official Iranian policy messaging. It seems the Iranians are speaking Trump's language, and they're doing it for a reason. Free trade, $1 trillion opportunity. So who knows what's going to happen? It's really dynamic. However, it's a really important op-ed, I think. But the Washington Post is paywalled. So we're going to go ahead and pull this up for a second. So the op-ed, Iran's foreign minister, the ball is in America's court. I referenced this twice in this episode already. So it says, and I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs. In recent weeks, a series of messages and letters have been exchanged between Iran and the United States. Contrary to some interpretations, these communications, at least on our side, have been neither symbolic nor ceremonial. We view them as representing a genuine attempt to clarify positions and open a window towards diplomacy. And this is where he directly contradicts President Donald Trump. Regarding Monday's comments by Trump, Iran is ready to engage in earnest and with a view to seal a deal. We will meet in Oman on Saturday for indirect negotiations. It is as much an opportunity as it is a test. The model of engagement we propose is not novel. The United States itself is intermediating indirect talks between Russia and Ukraine, a much more intense and complex conflict, essentially. Okay, he's also led talks before. Pursuing indirect negotiations is not a tactic or reflection of ideology, but a strategic choice rooted in experience. We face a significant wall of mistrust and harbor serious doubts about the sincerity of intentions, made worse by U.S. insistence on resuming the maximum pressure policy prior to any diplomatic interaction. To move forward today, we first need to agree that there can be no military option, let alone a military solution. President Trump clearly recognizes this reality in urging a ceasefire as the first course of action to end the Ukraine conflict. So we cannot imagine President Trump wanting to become another U.S. president mired in a catastrophic war in the Middle East. So everyone's basically posturing right now. We're massing forces out of Air Base Diego Garcia. We've expanded by 15% the amount of assets within the entire region. Then later on in this article, he goes through the history of the nuclear deal. It's actually quite good. So I think if you can find a way to steal a Washington Post article, you can definitely do that. What was I looking for? Oh, he does talk about the $1 trillion opportunity, but essentially the ball is in America's court. If it seeks a genuine diplomatic resolution, we have already shown the way. If instead it seeks to impose its will through pressure, it must know this: the Iranian people respond decisively to the language of force and threat in a unified way. There is a chance for the United States finally to have a president of peace, whether or not to seize that opportunity. It's a choice. Okay. A couple things about the general dynamic between the hardline Iranian government and the traditionally warlike neocon government in the United States. It's, to be sure, like, the Iranian government's not angelic, but the point really stands that essentially peace through strength, Trump's peace through strength doctrine that he campaigned on, that Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, always quotes, peace through strength. When has that worked in the when has that ever worked in the history of U.S. involvement in the Middle East and West Asia? The aggressive posturing to highlight relative strength has done nothing to prevent the United States' political or geopolitical adversaries from working to achieve their interest, even if diametrically opposed to Washington. So the Middle East is awash with failed examples of this dynamic, from Iraq to Syria to Palestine to Yemen. Strength posturing has always failed, and it is failing. Syria's Assad regime did not fall because of U.S. sanctions, a military presence, or the covert arming of opposition militias. Rather, like, Damascus responded to those U.S. actions by committing to destabilizing regional actions, Captagon drug trade, to pressure U.S. regional partners. It's just typical neoconservative talking points typically argue that interventional policies do not go far enough, often due to leaders lacking resolve. We didn't defeat the Taliban because we lacked resolve. We did. It's the sunk cost fallacy, right? So I don't know. In the entire dynamic, right? It's hawkish. Tehran has for decades rejected hawkish attempts at diplomacy, including sanctions, assassinations, internal piracy, to change its behavior, developing increasingly convoluted and dangerous deterrence policies across the Middle East. In this case, Washington's use of strength has emboldened Iranian hardliners and vice versa, and their hardliners have reinforced our neocons with a kind of like death spiral of increasingly violent interactions across a swath of countries in the region. So this whole peace through strength thing is absurd. The entire policy is absurd. So what he's saying, while I do agree and I do have a lot of hope that this can be resolved through actual diplomatic channels, Trump makes it seem easy. They're going to be direct talks. They're going to work it out. Otherwise, the hammer is going to come down. It's a dynamic situation. No one can really say what's going to happen for sure. There's mixed messaging from the Trump administration about direct talks. The Iranian government says indirect talks. And the Pezeshkian government is a reform government, and they are, but Pezeshkian's also in a very weak place politically, and nothing's going to happen without the overriding approval of Ayatollah Khomeini, who is also beholden to and is kind of a hardliner. So hopefully this can get resolved in 2 months before Israel does something crazy, but that's where things stand right now. And I just want everybody to remember, and I invite everybody to remember, that Donald Trump talks a big game. He said, before I even get into office, the Russia and Ukraine war will be resolved, or at least have a ceasefire. Now he's abandoned that complete talking point, right? I would be surprised if there was a ceasefire by the summer. Hopefully there's some sort of resolution before the winter sets in again in next year. But who knows? So we take everything with a grain of salt. But these are some of the complexities going into the Iran deal. And there's mixed messaging. So hope that was helpful. But again, yes, there's supposed to be a reform government in Iran that wants a relief of sanctions. Also, hardliners in Iran want a relief of sanctions. Everybody wants it. But of course, I was interviewing Dr. Asal Rad last week. And, the U.S. and Iran are kind of doing this thing like, we have to be strong. No, we have to be strong, and like going back and forth. So I have always said that I've always editorialized, and for the past, since 2009, since I was started to get involved in this stuff, that the U.S. would never bomb Iran. I don't think the circumstances for that are ripe yet. So we're going to hope for the best, and hopefully something can be resolved. Relief of sanctions, a de-escalation of hostilities between Iran and America. But of course, everything could go sideways at a moment's notice, especially with actors like Benjamin Netanyahu. So, yeah, this is more of like all the analysts I know are just kind of like, yeah, we'll see, I guess. But one takeaway is that this is the closest we've kind of ever seen it to a relief of sanctions since like 2015. And so if Trump it could be amenable to like having a business relationship and opening the markets to Iran, it has the biggest chance of happening right now. So hoping for the best. And now we are going into our second segment, transitioning to the West Bank and what's going on in Israel. This interview was recorded for security purposes last week and not released until both of the guests were done traveling. Our Palestinian guest rarely speaks English, so bear with him. And we're going to get right into it. Hope you guys enjoy. Tonight, for our main segment on State of Play on Mint Press News, we're going to be conducting a pre-recorded interview about the ongoing and little reported situation unfolding in West Bank now that the ceasefire in Gaza has been broken and atrocity upon atrocity continues to mount. For security purposes, this interview will not be released until Monday, April 7th. We're going to try to do this in kind of an evergreen fashion so the news cycle doesn't decay, but this situation unfortunately is not going to get better and anytime soon. So we do have a call to action at the end, and I hope you stick around for that as well. Today we are joined by what will be a familiar face to some of you, Captain Josephine Guilbeau, a former U.S. Army all-source intelligence analyst. Her mobilizations include Operation Enduring Freedom, which I unfortunately was a part of as well, where she supported cyberspace operations for U.S. Cyber Command and the Cyber National Mission Force. She's earned a bunch of Army commendation medals for her role in mission success. And since her resignation from the military in 2023, Josephine has been advocating for peace in the Middle East. We are also joined by Ahmed Tamazi, an academic expert and Palestinian from the West Bank with various degrees from Al-Quds University, Hebron University, and a PhD in strategic management from Lincoln University College. He is the president of the Federal Trade Union and Bank Systems over Palestine, both West Bank and Gaza. He travels globally, meeting with international members of the Federal Trade Union, with a most recent trip to Belfast, Ireland, and speaks about the ongoing economic effects of the occupation on Palestine. He has firsthand experience living in his entire life under Israeli occupation inside of the village of Hebron. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here tonight on State of Play.
Thank you, Greg, for having us.
So, as I understand it, you are both, oh my God, edit at 2:17. 3, 2, sorry, I got a phone call. As I understand it, you are both in the region at this time. Josie, before we get into Ahmed's piece, I was hoping, because you tried to travel from Jordan into the West Bank and you had a little incident. I was hoping you could describe that for the audience just so they can get an idea of what apartheid looks from the perspective of outside foreigners.
Yes, thank you for having me again, Greg. Several weeks ago, I came to the Middle East in order to enter into Palestine and the Holy Land to visit some of the Christian holy sites. This was my Christian pilgrimage. And I flew into Jordan and tried crossing through the King Hussein crossing. And I think it's important to note for anyone that doesn't understand, once you cross from Jordan into the West Bank, Palestine, there's roughly a mile of secure fences, electric fences, Israeli government walking around with firearms. There are observation points throughout this mile-long car ride or bus ride that you take from the Jordan Immigration and Customs to Palestine, but it's the Israeli Immigration and Customs, which is who you will meet with. So none of this is operated or controlled by Palestinian Authority or by Palestinian police. All of this is completely occupied and controlled by the Israeli government. Once I arrived to the Israeli Immigration and Customs, I gave them my passport and my itinerary of the locations that I was planning to go to each day, as well as which hotels that I was planning to stay at. And the immigration officer started asking me questions, and something must have flagged his mind, and he decided that I couldn't cross in this moment, and they wanted to do further questioning. So they took me into another room, and someone else came, another immigration officer came and started asking me questions about being a Christian, historically, I'm a Catholic born and raised. And so I told him this. He asked me questions. What did it mean for me to visit the holy sites? Of course, for me, this was easy to answer as someone who's been a devout Catholic my whole life. Of course, it would be an honor to be able to visit the holy sites of Jesus. And he wasn't satisfied with these answers. So now they are going to detain me, and they move me into an interrogation room where I have to take my phone out, and another officer, a part of the Israeli government, starts asking me questions more personally about my background, my job, my family. And she starts asking me to open up apps in my phone. She asked me to open up my contacts in my phone and type in the area code 972, which is the area code for Palestinians, to see if I had any contacts that were Palestinian. She asked me about my opinion of the war and what I thought the resolution should be, which I thought was odd. But she also asked me about my experience in the military, because when she asked what my job was, I said to her I was in the military 17 years. She asked me what I did there, and I said I was an intelligence officer. But then she started asking me about my assignments as an intelligence officer. And this is when, right, 4 or 5 times I had to say to her that what she's asking me, the questions that she's asking me, she is going to force me to commit espionage against my country. And I said to her, this is absolutely ridiculous, considering we are allies, that you would want me to reveal to you classified information about my job as an intelligence officer. There were several times she wanted to take my phone. I would not let her, because most of my friends and colleagues, I was an intelligence officer for over 10 years. So you can imagine many of my friends and colleagues work in the intelligence community, and their contacts are in my phone. And so I said to her, I can't give you my phone because I'm putting at risk to a foreign government all of these people who are in the military, in the intelligence community. And so we even got into a bit of like an argument over it. She was getting frustrated with the fact that I was not willing to give her this information. And after probably about 2 to 3 hours of her asking me these questions, they escorted me to another location where I was detained, and then presented me with a document stating that I would not be able to enter into Palestine and or Israel, is what the document says, and that I was banned for 5 years, and because I pose a public security threat.
I'll just say that a 3-hour interrogation is a long interrogation. Like sessions usually don't last that long. That's pretty crazy. So you were just escorted back to the border, and they're like, "Good luck, be free."
Yes, so they deported me back to Jordan, and then I enter into the Jordan Immigration and Customs, and they asked me why. They were actually really surprised that I wasn't allowed in, and they even said, "Well, what's your job?" And And I told them I, work for a media company. And before this, I was in the military. I think they were a little bit confused about why I wouldn't be let in as an American citizen. And then they just allowed me to stay in Jordan. They just gave me a visa to just stay in Jordan to finish my trip. So.
Yeah. And I'll just say as a side note, when I was in the military, I went through Ranger School with a couple of Jordanian officers, and it seems like we have better military cooperation with them than we do with Israel. But anyways, I'm actually not surprised. Do you think you were flagged on a list as a dissident? Because you've been very public about this, and there's no way that their intelligence apparatus is not tracking you.
Yeah, I thought, I wondered the same thing, but I actually assumed that had I been flagged in advance, that I probably wouldn't even have made it through the Jordanian border, because there is a lot of cooperation between the Jordanian immigration and the Israeli immigration at the border between Jordan and Palestine. And oftentimes, the Israelis will communicate names to them that not to let them even through the crossing. So once I got through the Jordanian crossing, I thought, okay, well, maybe they haven't flagged me. But surely once I entered and she started going through my phone, I had deleted all of my social media apps, Signal, WhatsApp, and everything. And she even was asking me questions like, when did you delete this? And I used the old Hillary Clinton, I don't recall.
Yeah. Well, we're glad nothing else happened to you. Absolutely. So 5 years.
Yeah. There is an option for me to go to the Israeli embassy and inside of the United States and argue for them to lift the ban. Once I returned to Jordan, I contacted my priest, who I had actually invited to come with me on this trip. But because it's Lent in the Catholic religion, this is a very busy time for priests. He wasn't able to come, but he was interested. So once I returned to Jordan, I contacted my priest and I let him know that they would not allow me to go on the Christian pilgrimage, and that when I return to America, I want to meet with my archbishop inside of the diocese where I belong in Ohio. And I also want to speak with administrators in the Vatican to let them understand that the Israeli government is stopping Catholics and Christians from being able to go to the holy sites and on our Christian pilgrimage, which is a really big deal because the Israeli government really stands on the fact that they love Christians, and there's this mutual support that happens between the Israeli government and Christians throughout the world. But the reality is that that isn't true.
No, we've seen videos of that disparaging anyone who's not even Jewish, like not even sharing the Zionist ideology as well. So, yeah, I mean, I would definitely be interested in seeing what the Archbishop has to say and tracking the Catholic Church side quest. I think that's a pretty interesting avenue, especially in terms of like an information operations perspective. So, yeah, I'll definitely be there to support you on that. So, well, that actually went better than expected because I thought you would have been flagged. So.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm flagged, but I'm sure once they initially flagged me, they most likely looked up my name on Google, my social media. For me, it would have been impossible to go through, if you Google my name, there's pages and pages of my advocacy for Palestine. So yeah. It really would have been impossible for me to have that all deleted. So the only thing I really could do to try and go was to delete my apps. And of course that didn't work because that set off a red flag in and of itself.
Yeah. So damned if you do, damned if you don't at this point. Well, glad you got back safe. So let's transition now to Ahmed. He was born in an Israeli occupied village. He's now the president of the Federal Trade Union and bank systems over Palestine, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. So I guess I was hoping we could just get a little bit of backstory on you, Ahmed, before I jump into the current financial situation and the overall military situation in the West Bank.
Yeah, to understand
your
about
life from
Yeah.
being born into the
Yeah,
occupation.
yeah.
If you can talk about
I
this.
born in 1976 in Hebron under occupation until now, as you know. Now the occupation closed all of the village, all of the roads, and there's some a lot of workers lost his job. Maybe about 600,000 workers lost her job after October 7. The Israeli occupation attacked anything and any place in Palestine, not just in Gaza. A big attack in Gaza, but in West Bank, you know, there's about 1,000, about 1 million settlers in West Bank, and the Israeli soldiers attacked West Bank in the Northwest Bank and the south in anywhere, and its closure Jerusalem and any of the road between any village or cities, and maybe it's
The road closures are the checkpoints. There are checkpoints.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of checkpoints, and there's in West Bank 955 gate, you know, a gate between the village and cities, and cutting the road between any place in West Bank, and it's more difficult to transport between any place in West Bank. Before October 7, I work in Hebron city. I was need 15 minutes to arrive our office, but now I need more than 1 hour to arrive our office.
Yeah. So they have heightened security procedures. Obviously, that's been expected. We keep hearing more reports about the prisons. The Associated Press reported 3 hours ago, as of today, that the first minor boy under the age of 18 has died in Israeli captivity. It seems like conditions are absolutely degrading. I think the foreign audience has a pretty good conception of what that looks like, insofar as that's possible for an outsider to have a perspective on. But what you said about 600,000 people, Palestinians, losing their jobs after October 7th, I think, based off your expertise, and I think we would like to kind of focus in on the economic situation, the lived economic situation for Palestinians after October 7th, because we've seen a lot of photos of Israeli soldiers going in, destroying banks, opening vaults, taking the money.
Yeah.
So I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about like what the financial situation is. We've seen them destroy every hospital in Gaza, power relay stations. There's no longer any sort of like trash pickup. Are they doing the same kind of this? All the schools have been leveled in Gaza. Are we seeing the same kind of destruction of the banking system as we're seeing in other civilian sectors?
Yeah. The situation, the financial situation is very difficult now because you know about 600,000 workers lost his work, and the Israeli army attacked all things in Gaza, like banks, hospitals, schools. the children in Gaza from 18th month don't go to the school. There is no school, no hospital. Some of the people in Gaza died because there is no hospital to treatment. They died in his home. The economic now, Palestinian economic is destroyed. There's a lot of companies closed because it's not can be continue the process because the closure, because there is no work, no profit, and no when because the closure and attacked the banks and workers in Israeli soldiers killed in Gaza. It's destroyed and killed all the day, and all of things in Gaza like hospital, banks, building, anything. But in West Bank, there's killed some of the workers when he go to work, destroy many of the branches, companies, insurance companies, banks, and other sectors, and the destroyed the economic now is very difficult, and the people and the workers, the Palestinian workers, there's not have money, and there's not get money. We facing a difficult to get food for his children, and there's difficult to anything, to medicine service, to learn, to school, learn about. But in West Bank, the situation is more less bad than Gaza. In Gaza there is no food, there is siege, there is genocide in Gaza. But in West Bank, we facing a lot of destructions and regulation and the gate and the closer and checkpoint. When I came to Amman, I have 10 hours to arrive Amman. After 7 October 7, we need just 2 or 3 hours to arrive Amman. We know Palestinian people not attack Israel. Israel it occupied Palestine in 1948. This is the fact of the conflict in Palestine. There is just we Israeli attacked Palestinian. There is no war. It's just genocide.
Yeah, exactly. I guess my last question is then, have you, we know what's going on in Gaza. I think most of the world knows. But in terms of West Bank and the occupation in West Bank and the violence of it, have you ever, in your time since the 70s, the 1970s, seen it this bad?
Have you seen the violence that we are seeing in the West Bank now? Have you seen it this bad in your life, or is this the worst it's ever been?
Yeah, it's very bad situation, and it's difficult. I want to say about what I expect when I return to my house or my home in the next week. I'm participate as a delegation in Europa. Europa Global, and talk about the genocide and about the occupation and the regulation of the occupation. I accept maybe when I return to my home, the Israeli soldiers maybe arrested me. But I am fair. I'm don't fear. I don't fear. But I maybe it's maybe happened.
To be clear, he says because he went on the recent delegation to Belfast, Ireland, to meet with at the European International Trade Union meeting, during his speech and when he addressed the other federal trade unions from all countries, he spoke about the ongoing economic and death and destruction happening. And so he hasn't been back into Palestine since this trip to Ireland last week. He expects once he goes back to Palestine, because he voiced this internationally at this conference, he will be arrested. But he's willing to accept this because this is his life. This is what has happened to all of them his whole life. So they're used to this.
Just as a matter of curiosity, is there a pretext? Is there a charge, or are people generally arrested without charge and placed in administrative detention?
Will there be some kind of charge, or will it just be for no reason? What will they charge you with if you get arrested, or will it be if they arrest you? What will they charge you with?
There is no cause. Maybe arrested me without any cause.
Arrested without any cause or charges, just for speaking out at the conference.
There is happened in Palestine, and a lot of people in Palestine arrested. In West Bank, there is the Israeli soldiers arrested more than 100 per today.
Just today.
Yeah.
Just today in the West Bank. In Palestine, over 100 Palestinians were arrested with charges.
It's normal.
It's a normal occurrence, and they are used to this in their lives.
Right. So, well, we all hope that doesn't happen. In the meantime, what would you like people in the international community to know and or do?
What do you call on the international community and Americans to know about Palestine, and what would you call them to do to help the Palestinians?
I call him and the American people to understand the historical of Palestinian case and what's the situation of conflict of Palestine. There is in 1948 there is occupation, and because that the Palestinian we need peace. We want to dignity, human rights. When the Palestinian demand, there is no conflict, and I call the American to institution or people of America to support Palestine against genocide, to call the lawmakers in U.S. to don't support Israel like bombs and anything to kill our children and our women in Gaza and the West Bank. And I hope the American people can know the tax from American people. It's used to kill children. Is that American people want that? I believe it's not. The American people don't want to kill the Palestinian people, but I call the American people the tax you paid to use killed our children in Palestine.
He's saying that he calls for the American people to understand that our taxes that we are giving to our government in America is what is being used to purchase the weapons that are killing the women and children here. And he calls for Americans to continue to pressure, and institutions to continue to pressure lawmakers to change the foreign policy. And I will tell you, here in Jordan, I've been here for a few weeks now, meeting so many people on the ground. And there's a very large percentage of Palestinians that, well, they have Jordanian citizenship, but the reality is they are Palestinian. And during the Nakba, most of their families were displaced here. And most people understand that for most of their lives, for hundreds of years, there's always been someone who has occupied the land. For example, the Ottoman Empire, the Roman Empire. But this occupation is different for their ancestors and for them because this is the first one that truly is trying to ethnically cleanse and exterminate the people. So there's this overall sentiment with the people here, the Palestinians, that it's no problem for them to live amongst other religions, Christians, Muslims. Of course, I'm Christian, he's Muslim, this is fine.
Yeah.
And the issue is that they want to steal their land and kill their children. But they have no problem living with the current citizens of Israel, but there must be peace. And this is the expression that I'm getting from everyone here. There's no problem
And,
living amongst the people, but you can't kick them off their land, steal their land, and kill them.
And I will the Palestinian struggle is not against anyone. It's not against Israel. It's against occupation. We need human rights. We need to live in dignity. We live as another nation, to learn, to hospital, to depend or liberation Palestine. We don't want to against anyone in the world. We just want want dignity and human rights as another nation.
Mhm.
Yes, there's many conversations that I've had here on the ground about how the overall feeling towards Americans is there's actually a sense of them feeling sorry for us. Even as Americans, they recognize that there's a level of oppression that we live under because of our government, and that America states that we're the free country, the democratic country, but internationally, everyone knows this isn't actually true. And they see this too, and they feel sorry for American people that we are like slaves. They have a hard time understanding that we have men that work 60, 70, 80 hours a week and still live paycheck to paycheck. For them, it's unbelievable how Americans are treated by our government as well.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, an important point because really, the occupation, if it's going to end, just like any other case of colonial history, it ends when it ends in the imperial core, in the empire itself. When people finally get fed up enough with sending their money to a foreign nation or a host of foreign nations, to basically commit violence for their own reasons and also influence our government. And it's not just AIPAC or the other lobbies. It's the military industrial complex. It's the media complex. It's the academics, the think tanks that all get kickbacks from Boeing and Raytheon and everything that basically goes into our overriding capitalist system, which is also why you're working 70 hours a week and still struggling to not get evicted. So the house of cards has to come crumbling down here. So, what I've been talking about in terms of like supporting Palestine, honestly, it's just literally acting in your own self-interest.
Yes.
And really pressuring in your own self-interest as an American citizen. So.
Absolutely. The end of the occupation over Palestinians will save American citizens billions and billions of dollars, not only for the weapons that we are aiding the Israeli occupation to for these offensive genocidal attacks, but also the defense structure that we have to maintain for them, the Iron Dome, and we give them all this mutual aid. Once the occupation ends, the American people will save billions in tax dollars.
I'm not trying to correct you, Josie, but like, there's nothing mutual about it, which you know.
Well, mutual.
Yeah, our greatest ally. Well, look, guys, we're out of time. I'm glad we were able to do this, put in like a call to action. So there is the protest on April 5th against the current Trump administration that's doing a crackdown, not just by giving a blank check to whatever Israel does, but also cracking down on free speech, not just within pro-Palestine protests, but anti-Tesla protests, which is a whole new level of corporate dystopia that we're seeing. It's insane. So hope you get involved, join a radical organization, and get stuck in, because this ends with us. And yeah, guys, I want to thank Captain Josephine Guilbeau and Ahmed Tameze of the Palestine Federal Trade Union for taking the time to come on with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, and sorry, folks, for the challenging circumstances and quality. We're doing our best here. Again, thank you so much, and we'll see y'all on the next one. All right, y'all. Well, that is our show. We're out of time. I also don't see any starred comments or questions. A lot of good stuff in there, I think. And yeah, we'll see what happens with the Iran deal. But I hope that was enlightening. And you asked me about the Hague Group, the 12 countries that can come together, that can form a military coalition to stop genocide. Yeah, it's not going to happen. The only country with any sort of power projection in that group is Turkey, and they're not going to do anything. They have long-standing intelligence cooperation with Israel, and they're currently dealing with trying to divvy up Syria and a lot of other diplomatic initiatives with Israel. So the Hague Group, unfortunately, y'all, is a non-starter. The end of the genocide in Palestine begins at home in European and American and North American countries. So, yeah, long fight going on ahead, and we will see you next week. Don't let the man get you down, and keep going. Sorry we didn't have actually time for a Q&A, but catch you next Monday. Cheers, y'all, and have a good night.